First of all, I would just like to congratulate New Zealand on making this bold move to try and become a smoke-free country by 2025. And they haven't picked, say, one policy to try and solve this really complex issue of smoking. They've nominated a whole suite of policies, including no longer selling tobacco products to people born after the year 2009. So if you're 14 years old, as of the time the law gets enacted, you'll never legally be sold tobacco products. And that's pretty incredible. They're also planning to reduce the number of outlets that will be selling tobacco products. And another policy is to reduce the addictive properties of tobacco products by removing nicotine. So it's a whole suite of things that they've initiated.
What's been the reaction among citizens? Do most people support it?
Look, from what I've seen on Twitter, I don't know if you can take Twitter to be a citizen poll, but people seem pretty excited, particularly my colleagues in tobacco control around the globe are congratulating New Zealand. I think a lot of countries, including Australia, have really, lost a bit of momentum on tobacco control. It was 10 years ago that we enacted plain packaging. We were world leaders then. It's time to do something a little different now. It's time to embrace new policies and new innovations to get those smoking rates as close to zero as we can.
And how do you think the tobacco industry will respond?
In tobacco control, we have this famous saying called the scream test. So if the tobacco industry is completely silent when you've announced a new policy or initiative, you're probably not onto a winner. But if they start screaming or lobbying MPs or threatening to sue, you're probably onto a really good policy. And I wouldn't be surprised if in the coming days we learn that the tobacco industry is not exactly on board with these initiatives.
Well, concerns have been raised about a growing black market for tobacco. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, look, the black market is something that actually the tobacco industry throws around a lot. They like to say whenever we come up with any policy that might reduce their sales and their profits, that a black market will flourish. But the truth is, in Australia and New Zealand and other countries that have reduced smoking dramatically over the past 20, 30 years, provided you put in good enforcement channels, the black market doesn't become an issue.
And Becky, what are the smoking rates in New Zealand? How have they changed over the past few decades?
Oh, yeah. So, smoking rates in New Zealand are fairly comparable to Australia, but of major concern is the very high smoking rates among the Indigenous population among Maori, especially Maori women. And despite the fact that initiatives like tax increases, smoking bans, graphic health warnings, mass media campaigns, all the things we know that work to reduce smoking, some of those rates have still remained stubbornly high. And these policies, it's hoped, and I sincerely would love to see huge success from this, will help to bring those smoking rates down as well.
And you mentioned before some of the other measures being taken to support these laws, and vaping won't be affected either, will it?
No. So if you look at the policies around vaping, there's quite a lot of diversity around the globe. If we want to compare Australia and New Zealand, for example, in Australia, we take quite a precautionary approach to vaping. If you are a smoker and want to access vaping products or e-cigarettes that contain nicotine, you do need a prescription from your doctor to access those products. They're not just freely sold anywhere. However, in New Zealand, you can walk into a corner store or a grocery store and easily buy vaping products that contain nicotine. And, I think that the approach that Australia has is probably more protective of young people, and we'll just have to see how this comes out in the wash in the future.
And what do you make of the time frame that has been set for these laws to come into effect?
Being in public health, I would like them to be enacted as soon as possible, but I understand that you need to plan and do communications and things like this, so not too rushed is important, particularly the technical issues around reducing the addictive qualities of tobacco products. There's probably a lot of behind the scenes work that needs to be done there, particularly to ensure that people understand that a less addictive cigarette doesn't mean that it's a safer cigarette. So hopefully quickly, people who smoke, if you continue to smoke, 2 out of 3 continuing smokers will die as a result of their addiction. So really, we can't move fast enough.
It is really an example of New Zealand leading the way again. As you mentioned, other countries could possibly follow suit, such as Australia, but might the laws look a bit different in other countries?
Yeah, there's a real spirit of global cooperation in tobacco control. We actually have a framework convention on tobacco control that's under the auspices of the WHO. So, just like we do for climate change, we have one for tobacco control. And it lays out what are the evidence-based policies that all nations who sign this convention should embrace. But it also encourages countries to go that extra step to develop new policies and to share new evidence. And when Australia adopted plain packaging 10 years ago, we now have dozens of countries that have done the same thing. So I don't doubt that New Zealand will sort of lead the way. Hopefully they will evaluate their policies exceptionally rigorously, and then we can adopt them and shape them so that they fit, our particular country and our particular way of doing things.
Becky Freeman, good to talk. Thank you.
Thank you.